Okay, so it's my pleasure next to introduce Dr. Mukund Chorghade. Mukund is president of Chorghade Enterprises and chief scientific officer for Think Pharma and Think Discovery, AGN Biofuels, and Empirico. He is also an adjunct research professor at Northeastern University as an appointments at Harvard and MIT. He provides synthetic chemistry and development expertise to pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical companies. Mukund also provides consultations on collaborations with academic, government, and industrial laboratories. Mukund is an advisor to the ACS Entrepreneur Resources Center. He will moderate our next panel, which is called The Investor's Perspective of the Pitch. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Mukund Chorghade. Mukund, the floor is yours.
So I normally like to stand and walk around and talk, but it was pointed out that this is a video session and the video is not clearly made if people are walking around in the shadows. So first of all, may I please invite my fellow panelists, Dan, Daly, and Dr. Flaim, to please come on stage and impersonate Sadiq Shah and Raymond Stewart as necessary, because there is no time to change those. So my name is Mukund Chorghade. In my own native language of Marathi, it translates to the divine soul. Slightly mispronounced in another Indian language, it translates to horse thief. So you can clearly see that there is considerable room for diversity. Now, I have been on the receiving end of investor pitches. I have had to go out and pitch to many people, some of whom have been harshly critical, some of whom have been complimentary. But over the years, we have acquired a sort of a good understanding of what it means to pitch well, and this is some of this that we are going to impart to you today. My fellow panelists have been angel investors and all teachers of entrepreneurship, so they have seen also many pitches, good and bad. And it is this thing, their collected wisdom that we are going to share with you today, rather than have a formal lecture. Now, what is entrepreneurship? I have always believed that there are many things necessary, one of which has to be a good idea. Good ideas come from different sources. Of course, we prefer that they come from chemists, but I will tell you of two very good ideas that came from chemists which had nothing to do with chemistry. I actually have a friend who wanted, instead of proposing to his then girlfriend, he got down on bended knees and proposed to his in-laws and said, "Will you please be my in-laws?" And they thought that was a very nice, creative thing to do. So in the Indian culture, they gave him permission to marry their daughter. There is a story told of another entrepreneur who actually visited the Chemical Bank of New York and approached them for a loan for $10,000, which he duly got at 9% interest after pledging his Mercedes 560 SE, new car costing about $80,000. They gave him the loan, they took away the car and the keys and put it in the basement. 3 weeks later, he came and repaid the loan, paid an additional interest of only 26.72. The manager said, "We don't quite understand you immigrants. You know, you had $250,000 in your savings and another $250,000 of pension. Why did you do this?" He says, "You don't understand, my friend. I was going on a 3-week business trip to India to park this car in downtown Manhattan, cost $48 a day. And I have got it done from you very safely for 26.72. So that is the different kind of entrepreneurship that we really want to see and hopefully what we want to encourage. Now, we are going to show you today, after comments from my fellow panelists, a pitch that has been deliberately exaggerated for some dramatic effect. We are going to call this a bad pitch, and then we will critique it together as a team, and then time permitting, I will share with you what is a decent enough pitch, which was actually successful in getting us some money. The bare elements of a good pitch are, of course, you must communicate a very, very good idea in eloquent and elegant terms without going too much into the depths of the science. investors are not going to be interested on a very scholarly exposition on the Diel-Saldar hetero 1,3-diaza cope reactions on making tetramethyl such and such. What they will be interested in seeing is, how do I monetize the idea? How does society benefit from it? Of course, communication skills are important. I cannot but resist telling you my favorite one about something that changed many things in the world. There was a British member of the nobility. His name was Lord Balfour. And Lord Balfour was a very controversial man. When he died, the family wanted a biography written. The ground rules were simple. People could submit writing samples. You could not tell any lies. Anything unpleasant had to be swept under the rug. The biographers found out after doing research that this man's uncle had committed murder in upstate New York, and for his troubles been sentenced to the electric chair and was finally executed in Sing Sing prison. The way this came out in this pitch, and the biographer wrote a beautiful letter to the family, this was the statement used. For a brief while, Lord Balfour's uncle occupied the chair of applied electricity at a leading institution in America. Now, to me, that is the genius of pitching. And perhaps I will now yield the floor to my colleague Dan Daly, and following that, Dr. Flaim to make 2 comments, and then we will get our distinguished colleague to make a very bad presentation.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Mukund. I just wanted to point out that I work at the University of Alabama, and I run an incubator there, but I have also a large student base. And we have a lot of experience in training chemists and engineers on how to make a good pitch. And so, and it's been a little bit of a painful process, as we've learned, but I have lots of experience in this training process, and I think Roger's going to abide by giving a bad pitch, so we'll get a chance to input some advice to his presentation.
Well, thanks for having me. My name is Steve Flaim. I'm actually, I've been on both sides of the line here. I spent the last 15 years working within the University of California, San Diego and the von Liebig Center, which is designed to try to accelerate technologies out of the university and into private sector. And I've also spent the last 10 years working with the Tech Coast Angels, which is the largest organized angel investor group in the country, located in Southern California. And I just want to say that all my experience at UCSD, we do as best we can to tune up the entrepreneur and the technology and give them all the advice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then they show up at Tech Coast Angels, and I go around the other side of the table. I'm now an angel investor, and I look at what comes out of the university. Even with all of our training efforts, it still doesn't work from an angel perspective. And so I've spent the last 5 years trying to figure out how to make those 2 things shake hands. And we're not there yet, but we're getting there. And I'm not going to go into a lot of details. Hopefully I'll be able to demonstrate some of the issues that we have to deal with. But let me tell you that the federal government recognizes this gap as well. I've been retained by the NIH to help set up the Centers for Accelerated Innovation. You'll hear a little bit more about this later in the program. The problem is that what comes out of the universities is still not ready for, in many cases, for the investor. So hopefully we'll be able to speak to that in greater detail as the program goes on.
Without much ado, here is our first speech.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? All right. As Mukund said, my name is Roger Brown, and I'm here to give a pitch on my organization, which is the IFH Engine Company. So I want to thank my colleague, Mr. Kenny Polk, who consistently points out how bad I am, and this is just a public display for you all to see. So without further ado, let me explain my organization if I can, please. So what I want to talk about today is an absolute revolutionary piece of technology that we have been able to introduce into the market. Its main focus right now is to increase efficiency and reduce emissions. This technology in this presentation is revolutionary, and I want you to, based on today's pitch, I want you to understand the advantages that our technology has over our competitors. I'll list some of those as we go through this, but hopefully you'll be able to pick out from the presentation why our technology is far more superior than any other engine company out there. I also want to make a point that our engine that I'm going to talk about is extremely cost effective. It also meets the new EPA requirements that came out, and I'll discuss those in a little bit. And then it's also going to provide you with the answers about our organization. The problem that we face today is the EPA recently released mandates that require 35% reduction in emissions for lawn and garden equipment, as well as for speedboats and other recreational activity or recreational watercraft. So right now, our competitors offer an increasingly complex solution to this, but we have streamlined our process, and that's what makes us much better than our competitors. So we're able to meet these government regulations that you can see up here as well. So the solution that we offer is basically it's a direct injection flathead engine, and I'll show a diagram of that when we get here in the next couple slides here. But again, it's a direct flathead engine that provides the solution to the efficiency and emissions problem which faces the small engine manufacturing company today. And again, like I said, our product is far more superior than those that are out there in the market as well. Our technology meets a consumer demand for green products, and it also promotes environmental responsibility, which, as I said, will meet all of the requirements the EPA laid out before. Our engine company has exclusive license from the technology's owner, which is the University of Alabama. So I want to point that partnership out. I think that's important to know. Most companies out there don't have a partnership, but we do. So keep that in mind. We are backed by a very large Tier 1 institution. And we also have developed our business around a patent pending technology. Again, it's pending, but I'm pretty confident in our technology will end up getting that patent. So the EPA mandates and the consumer desire basically creates this, a market that's ripe for entry for our technology. So we feel that with these new mandates that are going to go forward, like I said, we have this far superior product that's going to meet those mandates. So, we plan to introduce our technology first into the lawn and garden market, and then ultimately get into the watercraft area, which is the small engine market. And I want to emphasize, if you see here, that small lawn and garden market product is actually 24 billion. That's B as in Buffett, billion. So just make sure you get that figure out there, because we're going to tap into that market, and I have a feeling we'll be a billion-dollar company here very soon as well. Again, it's 24 billion right now, but we're expecting it to go to 25.7 billion. Again, B as in Buffett. So make sure you understand that. We also hope to enter the small engine market through a partnership. Again, most companies out there can't say they have a partnership. We do. So that's important for you all to understand that. We're hoping that partnership will get us in contract with folks like Briggs & Stratton, Sears and Roebuck, which is basically approximately 60% of that market. So right there, we can say we're going to dominate the market. Right now, if we just partner with one of those, we throw in another group like John Deere, Sears and Roebuck, we probably just tackle the market at 90%. So make sure you write that information down and understand that. Again, we are partnered with the state of Alabama, University of Alabama. So we have all these partnerships and promises. So that's what makes us a very unique and interesting organization. Now look at this bad boy. This is your current engine over here, and I don't want to screw this up. This is your current engine over here. A lot of moving parts and pieces. I don't even know what the heck that means. Now look at our bad boy. You got one simple thing right here, this little spark plug. You got the fuel injector. See how it flows real nice here? Honestly, I have no idea what the heck this thing does. There's all these ins and outs, whatever. That's our competitor. You don't want that. What you want is something very simple and sweet, right? It's just like put the liquid in the beaker, you're done. Exactly. This is what you have right here, very short and simple. And this is our model. This is our flathead engine. So why wouldn't you invest in this? Very simple, no moving parts, a lot less maintenance. Everybody's going to want to invest. Remember I said 60% of the market, this is what we're going to capitalize on. The other thing I wanted to show. Look at this. This is our competitor. Look at this. Carbon dioxide output. Are you kidding me? You might as well smoke a cigarette. Look at this. Look at this, almost nothing in 3,000 in speed. So, I mean, you want to go with our partner or our competitor who's going to, pollute the environment. They're not green. Absolutely not. This is the way to go, right here. Again, I'll talk about our competition a little bit. You know, when you look at the results in a more complex engine, the design, excuse me, I need some water. The designs are much more complex, and ours is actually very simple. So what I want you to understand is the competitors have a product that greatly restricts the possible location of these fuel injectors. We have one location, so if it's very simple to fix it in terms of the maintenance. Our technology has very little restrictions. We offer minimal emissions and maximum efficiency. And again, like I said, if you look at this, that explains exactly what I just said. I also want to point out that we have a joint development partnership, which will be attractive to the manufacturers because it requires relatively small upfront costs. I'm hoping you will help us with that upfront cost today. I know you want to invest. I've given you some very credible numbers, so I don't see why you wouldn't pull that pen and checkbook out today. Ultimately, like I said, through the partnership, we want to continue to develop our technology. Hopefully, we'll receive some royalties. I'm confident that we will. From the sale of our engine, or from the sale of our engines, and implementing this technology as well. So just to point out some of our team, I think it's important. There's a bunch of lawyers on our team. That's very important. They speak a lot of lawyer speak. Most of you don't understand that. Unfortunately, they do. So if there's any legal questions, I'm going to defer to them. All I can do is talk about how wonderful this product is. If you look at the numbers here, our revenue, if you look here real quickly, the revenue at the very bottom, look at this right here. Check this out. That's in thousands, guys. Look at that. And look where we started. Look at that. So enough of the numbers, but you can see this is going to be very profitable. So our current status right now, we're working on our preliminary term sheet with the university. Again, I want to make sure that you understand we have an exclusive license to market this technology. Other competitors do not have that, so that's what makes us stand out above the rest. We have no funding raised yet, but I'm sure we'll get there. We have a grant here or there. We won a business plan competition. I think we got a couple $100, so that's revenue, right? I mean, we're moving in the right direction. Right now, the technology developed, what we're using through the mechanical engineering department, but I think we're going to work with our tech transfer office. Again, like I said, we have a bunch of lawyers. They're going to get it right to where we'll get it out there and have no problem with that. So, you know, basically, that's our product, that's our program. It solves a pressing concern for the small engine manufacturers, provides a solution to the lawn and garden market. Our team, you know, we've secured the right technology, the right partnerships, the right license. So, you know, the only thing I'm looking for you guys is to help me with an exit strategy. You tell me where we need to go, how we get it out there, and we'll do it. Thank you.
So now the issue for the investors is to decide whether you will buy a used car from this gentleman or whether you will fund it. So I'm going to go in reverse order. First, let's have Stephen, then Dan, and then let's have the members of the audience also say a few words.
Okay, so first of all, find another technology and I'll invest in you, okay? So he's really good. He speaks well. He's very direct. He's got a lot of enthusiasm. He's trying to pitch the wrong technology here. So let me just start off. I'm going to run down some bullets. First of all, overall, the slide set is really abysmal, and the reason for that is that there's way too many words on every slide. So he's talking. You're trying to read. You can't take information from both inputs at the same time and make sense out of it. So the words that come out of his mouth need to be reflected in a briefer version on the slide that he's referring to. The first slide always has to say the name of the company, who the name of the presenter is, who's usually the CEO of the company, contact information, and some tagline as to what the company does. So by the time he's gotten the first 2 or 3 sentences out of his mouth, you know what the technology is, and you got it. You understand what it is he's trying to pitch. So I have to say that throughout the entire slide pitch and everything that he said, I'm still not sure I completely understand what the technology is and how he's going to make money from that technology.
Let me show you a slide if I can.
He's persistent, and that's a good thing. second thing, I did get the problem, but it took him about 4 or 5 slides before he explained the problem. Again, the problem was buried in a lot of text, so that's not good. He talked about the market. You want your pitch to get to what the market is. How are you going to get to the market? What's your go-to-market strategy? So, for example, are you going to create your own company and hire a bunch of salespeople and have them out and talking to all the Walmarts in the world, or are you going to partner with somebody who already delivers that kind of technology into an existing market? We heard about the fact that there were patents, but we didn't really understand exactly what the patents were, and so usually there's a slide on IP and exactly what is covered by the intellectual property that backs up the company. We had a team slide. You always have to have a team slide, but the team slide is supposed to tell the investor, why is it that this group of people are the ones that are going to be able to take this technology out and make money off of it? What we saw was a bunch of degrees and names, but we didn't really see any experience. So usually the team slide focuses on 3 people, the CEO, maybe the business, the CFO type, and the technologist. And there are statements about each of those people. Usually there's a picture, there's a statement that says, this person has done this before in 3 or 4 different situations. They won one, they lost one, but at least they have the experience. And so you know that this is the team that you want to invest in because they've already done it or they know many of the pitfalls. The exit strategy, we saw, actually he said, you have to come to us and tell us how to exit your money. Investors don't want to hear that. The investor wants to hear what you think your exit strategy is going to be. How is the investor going to get a return on his investment with a multiple in front of it? So most investors are looking for 3, 5, 7, 10, 100x return on their investment, and you need as the pitch person, as the presenter, to convince the investor that there is a real opportunity here for the investor to make some money off of the deal. And then lastly, we didn't really hear what the deal was. He needs to explain how much money is he looking for, what's he going to use the money for, what are the milestones that he's going to achieve, when are those milestones going to be achieved, and why is that going to turn the company into something that's really going to have a revenue. I didn't obviously believe his revenue numbers. That was way too aggressive. Although I like aggressive revenue numbers, and I like for the CEO to be able to defend those, and we can get into an argument about them, and then I get a chance to see how they think and how they defend their numbers. Okay, that's it from me.
All right. Well, I also agree, Roger, that you did a great job in pitching this, although you had not a clue what you were talking about, which is not usually the case with technical people. But the 2 glaring flaws in your presentation was, what was your business model? I mean, so you said you're going to license this technology, and then you said you're going to develop the technology. So what type of company are you going to you begin to build? Are you going to develop an R&D company that's going to have technology in the pipeline so that then when you go back to your numbers, you had investments in R&D, or are you just going to license this technology? So that was just very unclear. Is what type of company is this going to be? Are you going to be one and done? You're just going to license it and move on and go to selling equipment to Sears and Roebuck, which is, by the way, not an engine manufacturing company, but also, and then the value proposition. One, you on purpose really did not say what your differentiation was, and that is that a light engine is good for lawn and gardening because people have to lift it up. So therefore, you don't want a heavy, smelly engine in your face. And also that's where the CO emissions are important because the user is going to be exposed to them right immediately in that area. And 2, the other technologies that you laughed at are the current engine technologies by major manufacturers, so that not making fun of them on those lines was probably not advisable. But again, no mention of, okay, here's what their costs are, here's my additional costs, and this is why it's going to be of value to the customer. So there was no discussion whatsoever other than, invest in you because you're cute.
That's why I'm up here. I'll let my attorney speak on my behalf now.
I just want to pick up, did he do a good job of explaining the advantages of his technology over the conventional? And would you regard his effort at humor in almost belittling his competitors as a positive or as a huge negative?
Well, I would view it as a negative that he dismissed. Like I said, the direct injection gasoline engine is actually in the Lexus engine and other technologies. And someone in the audience that knew that would not be so dismissive. And the fact he never explained what a stratified charge was and why that having a high concentration of gasoline near the spark plug was advantageous for fuel economy and lower emissions. You just can't, well, you can, but it's not advisable to make fun of a technology that actually may be superior to yours. So therefore, I think you would lose some credibility if the people in the audience were knowledgeable. But we're talking about investors, so.
Stephen, do you have any additional comments on, did he come across as a knowledgeable person who's put a lot of thought into his presentation, communication, and all that?
Well, so obviously not. He didn't understand his technology, as we've already discussed. It's extremely important for the person that's pitching the company to really have a good understanding of what the technology is all about, why it's going to be attractive, who it's going to be attractive to, and what the business model is going to look like. So I think that's an extremely important part of this story. I'll just add a comment. Successful entrepreneurs, from my perspective, are people who not only have the technology experience, but they also have the business experience. And I wonder, out in our universities, I don't believe there are very many programs that train people like that. I mean, there's great technology programs. We train people how to be chemists and medical folks and so forth. But the people who are successful entrepreneurs who can bring their technology to a pitch session like this, they're gathering their information on how to do the business side if they're technologists by hook or by crook. They're sort of trying to take their courses, and they're probably gathering courses over in the business school, and they're sort of putting their own experience together. I submit that our universities are missing out on a whole new sector of training. Think about the sports teams in our country. We bring people into universities who are great athletes, and they do something for the universities. They don't necessarily have to have really good grades. Some schools ask for that and some don't. But it's their ability to be sportsmen that bring them into a lot of the universities. So I submit that there's a new sector of people that we ought to be trying to attract into our universities, and they're ones that are going to be recognizable as entrepreneurs. They're going to be smart, they're going to understand technology, but they're also going to understand the business side, all of these issues that we've heard about. I think I've said enough.
So I'm going to open up the floor to comments from the audience. If we can have 2 or 3 comments on the gentleman, and then we'll go on to other.
So as a CEO of DIFH, I thought you were pretty persuasive, but there was only one problem I had, and I think Steve alluded to it, and that is you didn't have enough pictures. I think pictures are worth 1,000 words. I would have gotten a lot of the stuff. I felt like I was dying, beaten to death by PowerPoint, with a lot of bullets and everything going on there. And I think in a lot of the successful pitches that I've seen, either from faculty or investors that come, once they show that 1 or 2 slides that says, okay, this is where my light engine goes, this is what it does, this is the advantage, and I can see that in 1 or 2, then I can listen to the rest of it because then I got it.
It's a very good point, yeah.
The other area that was really confusing to me, at least, was the partnerships you had in place. even with the university, you kind of laid out some things, but it was very ambiguous. It was the Department of Mechanical Engineering was there, and you've got rights, but it wasn't, it was kind of sounded a little slippery. so that whole part. Then you had this mysterious partner that was going to bring this to market, and without any clue as to how that was going to happen, who it was, and so it's very mysterious. To me, one of the successful things about getting a product to market is the partnerships that you really have. And you mentioned the University of Alabama. That of course that kind of gets your attention, but it has to be clear what that partnership is, what's the basis, how it's going to move forward, and again, that was all lacking.
Thank you. I want to interject a question. I want to ask this of Stephen. And first of all, I congratulate you, Roger, on having maybe a minimal number of lawyers on your management team. I'm sure you could have more. And I also want to congratulate you on a really superb bad pitch. So please join me in a quick moment. I'm a Pittsburgh boy, and I came to Washington, D.C., and the first thing I learned is the ask. Stephen, could you please help us to help understand? Go ahead and ask. Ask for the money. Don't be afraid. You're used to it. Could you kind of expound on that for us, please? I think that's a very important point.
Sure. I mean, investors. So let me just speak from the standpoint of an angel group. So angel investors, invest somewhere between $200,000 and $1.5 million in an entity. So it's at a stage well before the venture capital firms, but it's after friends and family. So there's an ecosystem in funding which you need to understand if you're going to do what he's doing. Angel investors look to invest about $200,000 to about $1.5 million, but they want to invest that in a company that has a pre-money value, that is the value of the company before the investment is made, that's not much more than $3 or $4 million. So that's the sweet spot for angel investors. So when a pitch is made, somewhere in the pitch, usually towards the end, the speaker is going to say, look, we're looking to raise $500,000 from you, and the pre-money value of the company is $3 million, and here's what we're going to do with the money, and this is, again, as I said earlier, this is how you're going to get your investment back. This is the exit strategy. We think we're going to be exiting through being bought out by somebody or something, but it's got to be in the pitch because that's what the investors are there listening for. So does that answer your question?
Certainly does. Thank you. Other questions?
I think there were one or two.
Yeah, do folks see comments like, look at this bad boy, see how it works? Does that appeal to anybody, or is that a non-starter?
The question was directed to who?
Well, I'll just comment on that. I think the way Roger did it actually wasn't terrible. But again, as I said, he was very dismissive of some advanced technologies, and that someone that knew that technology, that was knowledgeable in the audience, probably would think about it as being a very negative comment, especially when he never described why his good boy was any better. Okay.
From the investor perspective, you're sitting out there in the audience, you're listening to the gentleman behind the podium, and what's going through your head is, am I going to invest in this guy or not? Is he a guy that I want to do business with? Because if I do, I'm going to be sitting across the table from him for the next 4 or 5 years, trying to help him, trying to make things go forward. I submit that, he's very investable. I mean, those kind of that humor is a good thing. I agree that you got to back it up with why it's a bad boy as opposed to a good boy and so forth. But that kind of humor is not a bad thing to have in an investor pitch.
So I also appreciated the humor, I always do. Today what is happening is all the investors and all that, the most important thing to do is to get that first meeting and then the second meeting. So the first meeting was traditionally a pitch where you would make your stuff and then get invited back to meet a larger circle of them. Today I'm finding out in Boston that some investors expect to do this by a webinar or a telephone conversation where some of the enthusiasm and other things can be a little bit lost. I have a question of both my colleagues over here. We at ACS, and I'm involved in other organizations, we are actually trying to teach and train people how to monetize their ideas, how to even make that winning presentation. At what point will you begin to do that? We are trying to work with some universities where the PhD students and other people or postdocs take some course, but that has not been a universally popular idea among.
So it's been my personal experience that within the university, you either as a mentor, trainer, teacher in what I do, you're either working with a technology department or you're working with a business school. Nowhere do you work with both together, which I think is the problem, and I tried to allude to it earlier. There ought to be training somewhere within our major technology institutions where these two areas come together and where a potential entrepreneur can stand up in front of a group of people and try out a pitch like this and talk about the business aspects and the technology aspects. By the way, in San Diego, we're up to our ears in great technology, so the technology is usually not the limiting factor. It's usually the person doing the pitch. It's the people that are driving this. It's the people on the team, and those are the people that we're looking for. So give me a good team. I'll find a technology for them, and they're going to be successful. So I'm not sure if that answered your question, but.
And I'll just comment also, and agreeing a lot with what Stephen had to say. But at the University of Alabama, one thing that kind of shocked me is that I got our more entrepreneurial faculty together and told them I was going to initiate this program called Drive, which is very similar to what Georgia Tech does, and their Tiger program. And I'm going to link an MBA student up with a law student with a PhD student. And the first thing they said is, wait a minute, you want our graduate student to leave the lab, not do research, and learn something else. And I went, okay. So, but what I did was, traditionally I work with the business school, and that we have an elevator pitch. So I just start to fund a technical ladder, and just made the announcement we're funding the technical, and had the training session. And these graduate students showed up, and they were driven. You know, and I think a lot has to do with the job market that we talked about. But they want to learn, and they want to learn how to pitch, and they drugged the professor screaming somewhat to the table. So I do think that the graduate students and the postdocs who are looking at the employment situation are going to provide an impetus to learn, as Stephen was saying, but maybe not necessarily through the professor.
Actually, may I make a quick comment? Now, there are things being tried at Harvard and other institutions where they have set up an innovation lab where people of different professions sort of come and meet. We have found that the management students and the law students come and meet more often than the chemistry students or the biology students. So this is something that I feel we should push in the future, also to educate the graduate students when they come to an ACS national meeting. If they're an organic chemist, they park themselves in the organic division and listen to everything there, where they should be coming elsewhere also.
Roger? If I had $1 million, I would invest it right away. I thought you had a great pitch. I'm obviously not a person who has $1 million right now, so I won't scrutinize how my investment will go. However, I have two real quick questions. One, do you have a prototype, a working prototype? And second, can I take your working prototype, or would it be possible for me to take your model and put it on my lawnmower and my fishing boat?
Yes to both questions, actually. What they did was they did develop a, that was their first pitch. They actually went on to win $25,000 at a competition. And what we did was we actually developed the prototype to be a retrofit, so therefore you could take the old existing lawnmower off and put a new head on, and they're able to use it. So I
Well, thank you for a very entertaining presentation. But my question goes to the panel. In real-life situations, would you expect more in-depth analysis of the market? Because every time when I hear, I got a market of $26 billion, and his analysis, the analysis stops at this. I think this kind of proves that people didn't really think it through in terms of what is the market segment I'm addressing, and the sub-segments perhaps, and perhaps in more depth what the competition is, how is their product positioned, and how is my product different, and why am I going to come at a different price point, etc. So if you could elaborate a little bit, because we're coming from a strong science background, and we're very focused on the technical aspects. And yes, there is a level, a gut level where that tells us that our invention, innovation, molecule, what it might be, is valuable to the society. But I think it is very important to actually spell out what is the commercial potential and come with a more insightful analysis, and also prove how are you going to fight for market share and how are you going to gain market share, and therefore I think the financials should also deserve a much more in-depth analysis. If you could comment on this aspect.
In my humble opinion, you are exactly correct. It needs a better analysis. The most common mistake I have seen inventors make is that they assume a $25 billion market, but more important, make the critical mistake of assuming that they are going to capture all of it. And that's not a fact that is necessarily in evidence.
So if the entrepreneur claims they're going to capture more than about 30% of the market, they're dreaming, whatever the market is. I mean, it's usually a dream if you go beyond that. So what you need to do, and again, you know, when you have 15 minutes, you probably are going to have 10, maybe 15 slides if you're really good. They're going to be packed with information, but it's got to be displayed appropriately. So one slide needs to be the competition. I always tell people to just use what I call the bingo card. So it's a table, and going down the rows are all the competing products, and yours is up on top. And going across are all the comparable variables, the issues that are critical to this particular technology. And what you want to see, what the investor wants to see, is the bingo card with check marks in boxes. And they want to see the check marks all the way across for your technology, and they want to see that the other technologies are missing boxes with check marks. So that's like that slide pops up on the screen, and you completely understand the competition and where you sit within the competition in a matter of 3 seconds. So that's all you need for competition. And then go-to-market strategy, as I mentioned, it's a different slide. What is the market? What's the total addressable market? What percentage of that do you expect to get? Why, et cetera? And so that's another slide. So that's 2 out of your 10 or 12 slides that you need to have in your pitch.
All right, I think we have time for one more question, and then that will leave us around 10 or 15 minutes to hear a very good pitch. So I had a hand over here.
Hi, I'm Steph Davis with Nova STEM Institute in New York and my biotech startup. I liked your idea of utilizing the engine for different functions. I would have liked to see maybe some kind of prototype maybe handed out to the audience where people can touch it, feel it, and see. Maybe you could have mentioned a little bit about what it was made out of. Maybe even at some points about the history of engines in society, like the Sherman tank in World War II that had a Chrysler engine, things like that. And also the financials section. I would have liked it to seen some really good graphs that would show exactly how you make the money really quickly. I think from what I've seen at pitches, the investors like to see very quickly the profit potential really quick, the return on investments, but it's really displayed where they can get a conclusion right away on that. That was my point on that.
Yeah. So she brings up a really good point. That is an example. I remember one time at TCA, we actually had a technology presented to us, which was a new way to connect a mower to an ATV for farmers and so forth. And, this guy actually had drug in on a trailer his technology, the ATV with the mower on the front, and it was sitting outside the room, and he got to a certain point in his pitch, and he said, okay, let's all go outside, and I'm going to show you how this works. And so we all tromped outside, and he fired up the device, and it was very convincing. We didn't invest in him, but he ended up raising a lot of money eventually. So I think the idea of having an example, a lot of times it's something you can put on a tabletop, is really, really an excellent idea.
Yeah.
Good pitch.
So I'll be available at lunch if you'd like to talk about my fee structure for representing your product, service, or idea. Thank you.
He'll be collecting checks.
So as a moderator, I do nothing in moderation. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this 10-minute pitch we were asked to deliver for a very specific purpose. This was done in front of the government of Massachusetts, led by the governor. They had money to invest, and we were very successful in getting $750,000 from an angel investor group. Then we got $300,000 in matching grants from government of Massachusetts. We also got equivalent matching grants from the government of Brazil and also that in India. So it's truly a sort of globe-girdling business, which I will allude to just now. I have not made any changes since that presentation. The restrictions were very tight. You had to do it in exactly 10 minutes, and then the trap door would open under you, and you would pretty much disappear. So here goes. So this is our company, the Agro Green Biofuels. As the name implies, of course, we are trying to do a lot of green chemistry, and we are trying to make biofuels. Please, next slide, please. Oh, sorry. So who are we exactly? So what mischief we are usually up to is we are trying to make some alternative biofuels. You are all very familiar with the US rules where if you add ethanol to petroleum, you can replace about 10% of those needs. Now the EPA is going to about 15%. But today, President Bush's mandate still stands that we have to make several million gallons of ethanol per time to reduce our dependence on foreign oils and all. We took a fundamentally different tack. We said, why should we stop at ethanol alone? We can go on to butanol and octanol by coming up with some new pioneering technology. And the most important bit of it was we use synthetic reusable catalysts over here, focused on genetically engineered microbes as well. So we tried to do many of these things. The current practice has always been, suppose you have a lot of biomass lying around. Suppose you have corn cobs, you have corn stover, you have maize, you have all these plant products where the useful parts like sugarcane juice and all that have been removed and used already, but what do you do with all the waste? So many farmers and all just burn it, and it becomes a real problem to dispose. But they contain something very, very usable to us, and that is basically the lignin. Now, how do people depolymerize lignin? They are trying to do it by very esoteric chemical techniques, like refluxing with 55% sulfuric acid for several hours. And that's, of course, not particularly good for you. We have seen some very slow-acting enzymes being used, and in one memorable paper, they even used actually gamma rays. Now, the use of gamma rays in the bucolic surroundings of Newton, Massachusetts, is probably not the best way to go. So what we focused our attention is actually to design some synthetic catalysts. Of course, we assembled a team. Mani Vasakam, formerly from Harvard, Hybridon and all that. He became our CEO. He has a lot of expertise in agricultural genetics. I need no introduction. You have found my posters on several wanted slots in post office and all that. And of course, I am somewhat notorious in the ACS. But I bring together a lot of pharma expertise and catalyst expertise. Pam Randhawa, our co-founder, has a lot of experience in strategy and business modeling. Those of you who have seen the movie 21 can relate to the fact that she was a star member of the team from MIT, which did a lot of card counting in blackjack and all, made millions of dollars when she and her husband were still in their 20s. And now she's trying a crap game of a different kind that is trying to do pharmaceutical and other synthesis. Gretchen has enormous experience in marketing, and we have the appropriate list. We have a very distinguished team of scientific advisors, many of whom are known to you all in the ACS. We have people like Bob Grubbs, Rich Roberts, Steve Lay, Eric Jacobson, and so on. These are people who are not just advisors in name, they are playing very meaningful roles in the company. They are working on projects with us, for us, and in collaboration with us. Bob Grubbs and Eric Jacobson have the very dubious distinction of having had both me and my son in the laboratory at different times. So these are some of our macro trends. Now what happens in the USA? We of course go and work on corn and everything else. We treat with hydrochloric acid and then we produce this mixture of depolymerized lignin which we then ferment. But there is a big problem with corn right now. First of all, in the US, most of the biomass research has been done on corn. Today the corn prices are extremely high. They are extremely inaccessible almost, and therefore you are not going to get inexpensive ethanol to replace a lot of the imported oils and so on. Plus today the World Health Organization is putting a lot of stress on us to essentially say, please do not use corn because that depletes a very valuable food source. This is our industry landscape. There are many, many companies involved in this pre-treatments, as it's called. They use draconian conditions of acid-base enzymatic treatments. Then you depolymerize the lignin, you treat with more enzymes to actually convert this depolymerized biomass. You get cellulose and hemicellulose, you go to the sugars like glucose and xylose, and then you ferment all this business. Please notice that there is nobody operating commercially beyond this level. And this is what we have tried to do. So we have invented catalysts which are synthetic and recyclable, which work at ambient temperature under very mild conditions. Then we have genetically engineered microbes, and we essentially proceed all the way to butanol, and then with Sir Richard Roberts' help, we are indeed attempting to go to octanol itself. Now this is from the Department of Defense and Department of Energy. So they have calculated that there are many, many technical barriers to ensuring very good, efficient production on a cost-effective basis. So you can see all of these, the yields are kind of variable. Again, as I said, we use a lot of conditions which are not possibly the best. And this is what we do. These are our differentiators. So we treat with this synthetic catalyst, which simply works extremely well. We can do it at room temperature and pressure. The catalyst has an incredibly high turnover number of 100,000 plus. We have generated in situ enzymes, so we don't have to add external ones. The microbe really secretes its own enzymes, and then it eliminates eventually the distillation and all that. So these are the three boxes. This is what I bring to the table as a chemist, and then of course the biologists are always working hand in glove with us, and that works out very well. So this is my recalcitrant lignin. It's a very, very complex molecule, but please notice all the ester bonds from which by proper hydrolysis one can derive sugars. One can also derive phenols, which are very, very good for perfumery industry and so on. Plus, of course, we can sell some glucose. Now here is our synthetic catalyst, which has been a true game changer. So it cleaves this lignin business. We have designed catalysts which are sterically protected and electronically activated. These catalysts just last a long time. They are biomimetic. Most of the commercial catalysts simply do not. And we found out that by incorporating the steric barriers, we can make a more effective catalyst. When I was a young man studying organic chemistry, when the professors would ask a question, why doesn't this react or why this reacts so slowly, I had no clue about the answer. I would automatically say steric hindrance, and of course many times that was the correct answer. So today we finally figured out a way of using this very nice thing. Our technology can of course be used in microreactors that are easier to install. Our whole game plan is not to create another BP or Shell or Mobil or Exxon. Each farmer can do this work in individual units. So Madeline, next time you can fly to Philadelphia in a small plane, and the fuel will be the backyard waste that can be generated in houses and so on. Here is our catalyst. This is a slowly tumbling species. Of course, there's a central metal atom over here. But this is very prone to dimerization, and it dimerizes very readily. This is what we do. We have put these steric barriers. We have put electronic activators over there. So this whole energy, the electronegativity, is transferred to the central metal atom, and of course the catalyst continues to grow. We next move on to the biology. We can do this in situ cellulase secretion. We have inserted cellulase genes into the yeast genome. Then we have made butanol by actually genetic manipulation. And Sir Richard Roberts is a big advocate of making octanol because it is that much closer to octane. And we got a lot of interest on this from the NIST and so on. Plus, you can dehydrate octanol to octene, and that's where Bob Grubbs comes in with his magical olefin metathesis. So this is some of the genetic manipulations that we can do, all in a good cause, of course. So we now have an integrated technology, which is indeed very nice. We put in biomass, we can delignify it, we can add these recombinant microbes, we get glucose and some pentoses, and we can finally ferment and recover these particular alkanols. This is our bottom line value proposition. So we can impact this at different stages over here. The yields are, of course, at an optimal high. We have no toxic inhibitors of butanol. Enzyme cost is low. Our infrastructure costs are very low because when you heat with concentrated sulfuric acid, you have to replace pretty much the whole plant in double quick time. We are now addressing a lot of the micro markets, which so far has not indeed been the case. Now take a look at our analysis, which is why we got funded for Brazil, India, China, etc. We simply said, what are the other sources of biomass? In India and Brazil, people use a lot of sugarcane. And that, once you take off the sugarcane juice, that gets separately fermented to ethanol. Now that is good food for thought, but we need the ethanol for some of this. And the entire biomass is basically lying completely unused. Then in Europe, we have found out that sugar beets give us a very good thing. So we have done all these experiments from bagasse and all that. In India, we said, why only have sugarcane? We can have wheat straw, rice straw. And what is significantly more important to us, we have used coconut, we have used some other date palms and so on, all of which give some very, very good results. So this will show you why this kind of technology can be useful. There are diverse players, micro markets, sugar factories, oil and petrochemical companies, many of whom can use this pre-treatment because none of this really exists. What are our capital requirements? Of course, we ask for at least 5 million. You don't always get what you ask for. There are many companies which have offered to collaborate on proof of concept studies. Now the work is in progress, literally. We're trying to make 100 and 1,000 liters of ethanol. These are our funding requirements. And there is cautious optimism that we have indeed solved one particular problem. So here is our value proposition: non-hazardous pretreatment technology, genetically engineered microbes again. But we also have a lot of business innovation coming not from me, but from my distinguished colleagues. We are designed to scale and capture not only macro markets, but also the micro markets where this bio-waste and all that can indeed be used. So we are having some collaborations going on with UMass at Amherst. As it goes in any pitch, people can either get something and say, wow, this is a good one. One distinguished member of the audience was asked, did the speaker succeed in communicating their science and other things to you? That person replied, before he began his talk, there were two people who knew what he was talking about. One was he, the other was God. Now at the end, that number may have been reduced by at least one. I hope that has not been my fate today. Thank you.